One of the most important things that people often overlook, and the reason why so many people don't like kayak fishing, is because they get the wrong kayak initially. To keep you from regretting your purchase, I'm gonna walk you through some of the options that are available to you. Number one, there's inflatables. The reason I like inflatables is because they're lightweight, they're easy to transport, and they tend to be a little bit less expensive than hard-sided kayaks. The downsides though are they're usually not as riggable or as fishable, meaning that they're not designed for fishing normally, so they're not as easy to fish out of and make your own. Two, most of them aren't as comfortable either. I've paddled in several inflatable kayaks, and I've never just been like, oh, this is the most comfortable kayak I've ever been in. They've all been, I'm tired and uncomfortable after just 30 minutes to an hour fishing. And if you're like me, you want to spend a lot of time on the water and you're going to want to be comfortable. The third thing is, personally, I don't think they last as long as a hard-sided kayak, but it does depend on how well you take care of it. So if you clean it after every use, if you properly store it and don't just throw it outside, it will last you many years. But for my purposes, I like a hard-sided kayak, and here's why. Number one, you've just got so many options. I've got a paddle kayak over here, I've got a power kayak back behind me, and I've got a pedal kayak, and I've got my dog joining the video. He thinks he wants to be in. So no matter what you feel like, you can go and fish the way you want to in one of these hard-sided kayaks. Let's walk through the benefits of all of them. So right here, I've got a sit-inside kayak that's mainly going to be a paddle kayak. It's very lightweight and it's actually designed for fishing, this specific model, but it also makes just a good, let's go paddling down the river kind of day, or go paddling at the lake, throw it in a pond, whatever. It's just a good all-around kayak. It's a lot less expensive, but once again, it's not as comfortable, and you're gonna need a trailer or a truck or throw it on top of an SUV. It's not really designed for people who have cars to haul it around. The next kayak I'm gonna talk about is my power kayak. Now, this one, I throw a battery in it. I've got a trolling motor on it, obviously, and I love it. But I can also paddle it, so I've got both options if I really want them. However, there are a few downsides to this one. Number one, it's super heavy and it paddles like a barge. So I really wouldn't recommend it for beginners because it's not as easy to paddle, it's not as easy to control, and you really need to learn to control your kayak when starting fishing. That's very important, and this one just makes it really difficult. Unless you've got it all rigged with all the stuff, then you can spot lock or whatever, and you can control your boat that way. But then you tend to spend more time playing with the toys and less time fishing. It's a little bit of back and forth. Another thing that sucks about this is you have to have a trailer to haul it, or a truck, or some way to haul it, because it's heavy even without all the gear on it, which is why I own a kayak trailer. Makes it a lot easier, and throwing it in the back of the truck wouldn't be as bad, but I would not want to load this kayak on top of an SUV every time I go to the water. The greatest benefit about this specific kayak is how comfortable it is. It's got an amazingly comfortable seat that sets up like a lawn chair, and I can sit for hours and hours and hours and days and not get uncomfortable. And I can actually stand in this kayak when I do get a little bit uncomfortable, stand up, stretch my legs, and keep fishing. All right, the last kayak that I'm gonna talk about is a pedal kayak. I absolutely love pedal kayaks. This is my parents'. I've got to fish with it a lot. They fish with it all the time, and they absolutely love them. The reason this is so great is because you don't have the heaviness of the battery or the trolling motor. You've just got the pedal system. You drop it in, hit the water, and get going. It's a lot of fun to use because you can control the kayak really well, and plus it's really good exercise. The downside to a pedal kayak is they don't fish in very shallow water. This specific model isn't as stable. I still could stand and fish in it when I tried, but it's not something that I would want to do in windy or rough conditions. The seats are very comfortable. They sit at a decent height, so you're not sitting on the floor uncomfortable. It's a very fishable, riggable boat, meaning you can throw a depth finder on here, a fish finder. You can put a micro power pole on here. You can throw a Yak Attack Black Pack Pro in the back, have all your fishing gear in it, have all the rods you need. everything and you're ready to go in this. There's a little bit of dry storage up front, so you can bring some stuff like, you know, a towel or really anything that you want up front. And overall, a pedal kayak is one of my favorites to fish out of because you can control it using your feet and keep fishing with your hands instead of trying to paddle or adjust with a trolling motor. So you purchased the perfect kayak and now you want to know how to rig it. First of all, what the heck does that mean? All that means is how do you outfit it? How do you put what you want on your kayak to make it yours, to help you fish better, to make you feel more comfortable, all that kind of stuff. There's endless possibilities on how to do this, but generally most serious kayak anglers have a fish finder, a battery of some sort, and some way to hold their gear. And some of us crazier kayak anglers also add a motor on top of that, add power poles, add anchors, all kinds of other stuff. So there's two opposite ends of the spectrum you can go. You can go a super plain setup or a complete rigged out setup. And I'm gonna show you a little bit of both with my kayak. First of all, I'll throw this in the water and go fish just like this. It's a super plain setup in the fact that I really don't have anything but the boat. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money, you can literally get your boat, take it to the water, throw it in the water, hop in and start to fishing. And it's as simple as that. Your rigging is all done. You don't need a whole lot. Or you can go total opposite end of the spectrum, which is what I tend to do more than I should. And that's rigging it with a trolling motor, with a depth finder, and then packing it full of all kinds of gear. Now that we know how we're gonna rig our kayak, let's toss this into the water and talk a little bit about how to control it and how to actually fish from it. All right, we're on the water and I just wanna go over some basic paddling techniques. First of all, everybody knows you're gonna paddle forward, pull it to you, whatever, but a very important one is the backstroke, because you'll notice that the wind starts blowing you into a dock, into some cover, whatever, where you're fishing. You just gotta stop and back up. That way you don't get too close and blow it out. So understanding how the backstroke affects your kayak is critical when fishing. Another one that's really important to know is actually how to move more sideways. You'll notice that as I pull here, it shoots my front end to my left, your right. And then as I paddle on my left, it shoots my front end to my right and your left. One way that I actually control my kayak is by using the lure to do it. Now, granted, this is when I'm fishing a lure that's got a lot of drag. So like a crankbait, a bladed jig does this a little bit, and a spinnerbait just a little bit. But those three are the primarily ones where I'll actually cast out, and as I'm reeling back, if I want to adjust the direction I'm going, I'm going to switch whichever side of the kayak I'm reeling my lure to. This helps point my nose in whichever direction that I need to go, and just helps me control my kayak overall. All right, another way to control, or at least use the elements to your advantage, and that's the wind and the current. Now, typically I want to fish into the wind, but with a kayak, it makes it kind of hard because the wind will blow you around and you spend more time fighting the wind instead of actually fishing. What I typically do is I find a good, happy speed that I'm floating at and just make micro adjustments to whichever direction that I'm facing. That way I can keep fishing more than I actually am, making adjustments. The same is true in a current, in like a creek or a river. I'll just go with the current. Now there's times obviously when I'm paddling against the current and trying to get to a better spot, but generally I'm just gonna let the current take me, and as long as it's not pushing me into a dangerous situation, I'm just gonna go with the flow and fish what looks really good. Now there are countless techniques that you'll just have to learn and develop as you continue to fish, but I think one of the most important that I've found is learning how to paddle one-handed. I'll hold it with one hand, I'll use my forearm to pry against, and I'll make a paddle, or I'll do the opposite. I'll throw up this hand and paddle this way, or pull. Paddling one-handed allows me to continue to fish at least a little bit. So that's the basics of how to catch a bass out of a kayak. One thing that I'm a huge stickler on, you'll see in all my videos, as far as when I'm kayak fishing, I'm always wearing a PFD. That's because it's a life-saving device. I fish a lot by myself, and even when fishing with people, I'm wearing one just in case something happens. So always wear your PFD, no matter what. And these are just ways to control your kayak using a paddle. You can also throw on a trolling motor like I mentioned. And if you want to know the fastest way to mount a trolling motor onto a kayak, check out the video down below me and I'll see you there.